Going live now.
Facebook Live.
Still on YouTube.
Facebook and YouTube Live. Let me see. You turned it on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm looking at it right now.
Why am I not seeing it?
This is cool. I never get to see it from Neil's side.
Oh, yeah. He has the background.
Double
the
duty in
background
today.
view. Well, I'm just going to trust that we are live. I don't see it yet. But in any regard, there we go. That's what I was waiting for. If you're happy to catch us for the first time on this platform, YouTube Live, then we do this on Thursdays about 6:15 to 6:30. We jump on. This is before the show comes on to the regular show that you hear on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and such. So it's a good way to interact with us. We incorporate this into the show. Enjoy having you aboard. We have the normal Miss Victoria Tori Pendergrass. Victoria Vicky? You never go. Why do you go by Tori, not Vicky?
Because I will not talk to you ever again if you call me that.
My mother's name is Vicky. What's wrong with that?
No. My brother, fine. My brother grew up like singing the Icky Vicky song from Timmy Turner. And so I know other people that go by Vicky, and that's fine. To each their own.
Yeah.
But to me, Tori literally comes from Victoria. Like, it's in the name Victoria.
Do you know the Icky Vicky song, Neil?
No. I should. My wife loves
It's
Tina Turner.
Icky Vicky, you're so icky. Something, and then it's like something.
So PTSD from family.
Yes.
Okay.
So
this
yeah,
is-
I
this
will
is-
no
I need-
longer talk to you if you decide.
I
to call me
most humbly
Vicky.
apologize. You know,
Also,
I was
don't
just
call me Tori, please.
No, you're Victoria to me. I don't
Thank
know what
you.
the hell they do at home. That's not my deal. And then we got Neil coming out from behind the curtain with us today. Mr. John is dealing with some family stuff that he need to deal with. So welcome to you, Mr. Neil. How are you?
Good.
Yep.
Good. Week's almost over.
Indeed.
Holidays coming up. Kind of winding down the 2023, which is like this slow, business slows down. Businesses are all going on the vacations and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's just this calm before
They're
the
not bugging
storm.
you, huh?
Because 2024 is going to hit hard, I'm sure. So enjoy it.
Well, get your rest in, brother. So we are. Greetings, Miss Cass. She joins us. You are live on YouTube, she says. Not Facebook.
Hi, Cass.
So we're going to be talking about assertiveness today again. We didn't really get very far into our thing.
We did
But we
not.
also wanted to really kind of talk about the holiday greetings in a
Yeah.
fun way this week, instead of some of the tough stuff that holidays tend to bring. We want to try to bring a little bit of the cheer feel. So we are ready to go, I think, on the regular podcast, Mr. Robinson, when you're ready.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. I have to start recording.
Yeah, that would
All
be a
right.
help.
Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, greetings. Happy holiday season. This is December the 14th. Thank you, Victoria. Not to be confused with Vicky. You should have told me that. You should have told me that. That was a mistake. Before the mics came on, we found out about Icky Vicky song. We'll just leave it. You have to go to YouTube to see it. Listen, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights directly from a therapist and a panel of therapists, I should say, in personal time in your home and in your car, but it's not delivery of therapy services in any way. We are covering assertiveness again today. We didn't really get to it a lot last week. We covered a little bit of a really good conversation with depth about how and when to share family traditions with Santa Claus and things. So that was a really good discussion. You want to tune out the kids to that discussion, particularly a fair warning. I really want to say that again, but I think that was a good conversation last time. The assertiveness questions is, do you know what it really is? We covered that last time. Why do people get passive and why do people get aggressive is some of what we want to talk about, because the holidays can make us need assertiveness. Would you agree?
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're also going to get into some holiday traditions we enjoy, have a good feeling for the holidays, and a quick little current event. So the book is out, Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Emotions, and the marriage book, Re-Understanding Your Marriage, is going to be out in 2024, definitely not 23.
Do you have the title squared away? Because I know that your last book, you for the first 3 months, you kept calling it two different titles.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just messed up all your equipment. Re-understanding for sure is what it's gonna be. Not rediscovering. It's re-understanding. I know it now. I think I know it for good, but don't mess with me, otherwise I'll say it wrong. So re-understanding your marriage is being produced. So right now we'll get the finalized title and all the books, and it's gonna be fun to produce it. There's a lot that goes into the production part.
Cool.
I may ask you your opinions.
Of
Actually,
course,
you
I'll be
listening,
happily give my opinion.
What do we want it to look like? I will be asking you. 5 stars on Apple iTunes. What do we do? Spotify. You get really help us out because it helps us grow the show. If you're listening to us and you haven't clicked the like button, dude, you're failing us. You need to click the like button. This is a human emotional experience, and we endeavor to figure this out together. So I asked John to get this current event. Being that he's not with us, I'm just going to say what we heard. Truth be told, it was on the Skeptic's Guide, so I know that he heard it.
Oh.
And they do news stories, and they look at what's being studied, what's being done in science, and they kind of go through the particular article and look at all these kind of new things that are going on in science. So one of the things they did is they found for the first time a 20-year-long study that was done right about the time that the internet came out, and they were trying to find if and how much there was an effect on mental health. The concurrent correlation between increased internet use and mental health impact. What do you think they would be finding?
There is a correlation between decreased mental health status and an increase in time on the internet.
So increase in use of the internet correlates to
a
decrease in mental health function.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I agree. To me, it seems obvious, but you got to get the numbers out there. It seems obvious that the increase in internet would decrease because of all the stuff it does.
Why do I feel like you're going to tell me that it's not?
Because they said there's no impact.
What?
I know. I am highly skeptical, though. I chose to make this as a current event, and John may bring up the thing again with the actual study and all this. And studies are important, but you got to be careful about what it is that you're studying and really what you're not studying and what things show and what they don't show, right? So I have a lot of questions about the details of this study, but these guys are good, and they know good studies and bad studies. They really do. They do a good job for what it's worth. I love their show, and they brought this out for a reason, which surprised me because I have so many questions about the depths of how they did this functioning, and I'm not going to get into it today, other than just to say, look, you have to be aware of looking into studies. What it is that the depths are that you're researching. Because I'm willing to make a bet, a hard bet, a big bet, that they didn't study social media.
I was going to say that because you can use the internet and be productive and do things.
Yeah.
But once you
Gaming.
get social media involved, we're not even gaming, watching just
YouTube, yeah.
Netflix,
Correct. Yeah. And so we know that just like TV, everyone was all fearful. Oh, the boob tube is going to ruin the kids and we're going to be upset. I'm the result of that, Generation X.
Well, that explains a lot.
TV. Stop.
That would be right.
You're in about the same zone, bro. So it didn't. TV didn't. Radio didn't. Increase in technology as fear as it creates doesn't tend to do that just automatically.
Yeah, and I also think that this study, how can you... I don't know. It just seems like there would be a lot of extenuating circumstances in someone's life.
Well, you got to quantify stuff.
Right. Yeah. That's
you got to quantify it.
How
and
exactly
measure it.
are you measuring the direct, if there is a direct correlation between...
Well, they used very specific measures, very specific scales. I mean, it was well done. But I just don't know what exactly they were.
I think
did they look at the age groups too?
Yeah,
that would be one thing. Because I feel like if you're 40 when the internet comes out, it's going to affect you a lot different than if you're 15 or 20.
Yeah, they broke it down in subsets. Actually, they did, and it was so two things. One, be careful what you research or what you hear and how you interpret that.
Right.
And to understand that technology doesn't necessarily automatically destroy your mental health
Right.
like people fear.
It's the content of
Sure.
what you're doing.
Yeah. Now, if we took a correlation between the pornographic experience that people are having on the internet and correlate that to your mental health, I wonder if we'd find
Or even just
some
like
effect, but-
Instagram
Yeah.
or Facebook or TikTok or any other. It would be so interesting to see. Because if the study's been over 20 years, then that means it covered when social media started.
Yeah.
Like, so it would be interesting if they would have actually
targeted
social media to see, and maybe even not just the internet, but like social media specifically. Like I remember there was this experiment that someone did on Instagram where it was more geared towards like alcoholism, but where they created a fake profile for this girl or this lady. And in every single photo that she posted, she had some sort of alcoholic drink in her hand. And the experiment was to see like if people noticed that like everything that she posted, she was holding either a wine glass or a cocktail glass or a beer or some kind of like alcoholic drink. And I think they said that like absolutely no one like reached out to her, like messaged the person on the profile and was like, hey, you good? Like, and I think, I mean, that was more, but like, it's just, the impact of social media on our lives just like fascinates me.
It goes back to the disconnected connectedness.
Yeah.
Now, if you were going to lunch or dinner with that woman every time and you saw her drinking every time, you'd put two and two together. But with social media, it's so disconnected, but yet you're connected. Like, you don't put that concern together. Like, oh wait, she's always having that drink in her hand. Like, so it's weird. It's that weird thing we've talked about, how social media connects us, but yet keeps us so disconnected.
Right. Such an irony, but absolute truism. So we wanted to just spend a little bit of time, normalizing the holidays or sharing some fun of the holidays for you, because we do know and understand for sure in the therapy world that you have so many things going on in your life right now, and a lot of them are not pleasurable. A lot of them are filled with hurt and grief and dread and pain. Our therapy experiences in our offices, reflect that. People have a hard time, during this time of year. But we also do have a lot of beauty. We have a lot of fun and family traditions and experiences that do build up joy. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time with our group, to kind of go through some of those. If you guys have thought about it, I'll start. Like, I'm actually one of those weird kids. I was thinking about how this developed, but when we would get our Christmas presents, everybody's got a group of presents, right? And I would always wait, until all the Christmas presents were opened, because I really wanted to watch you, Victoria, getting your gift. And particularly if I got or participated in getting you the gift, even as a young kid, right? So and also I would enjoy when everything was done and quieting down. Well, I still had this pack of gifts that you have to watch me, and that was fun. So that slowed down gift exchange is what I really enjoy, and I was thinking about it this year, why that is the case, because I really really enjoy that, and I think that's kind of why when we was kids all this stuff was happening, and I would just no, I'm not doing that. I don't. I would put my gifts and build the stack and just watch Neil, open up his stuff, see what he got from Santa and stuff. That was weird.
You were a weird kid.
It's weird.
Hey, my family is a one person opens a gift at a time, and we go in a circle.
Yeah.
And one person it takes forever. But
if you go crazy with gifts, it teaches you next year.
Yeah.
Calm down. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
We used to do this thing. So we're not German. It's a German tradition, and
I like German stuff.
Yeah. So it's where when you decorate your tree, you hide a pickle.
Oh.
In your tree.
How
and
cool.
Well, the original tradition is the parents hide whoever decorates the tree hides a pickle on the tree. And then Christmas morning or Christmas Eve or something like that, the kids try to find the pickle, and whoever finds the pickle first gets an extra gift for Christmas.
Oh, wow. That is awesome.
However, we don't necessarily follow that exact tradition. However, for the last like couple long years, maybe like 10 plus years, my mom, when I was still living at home, my mom did that. She would hide a pickle, and then I don't really know if my brother ever tried to find it, but I would always be like so excited to come home when I was in college and when I was in grad school so that I could find the pickle. And even now, as a married woman, like I like going home and I try to find the pickle. And so now,
never heard of that before.
Now this year, and I've done it with my husband because I usually decorate the tree and I'll hide the pickle. And then when people come over, we try to we see if they can find the pickle. And then this year, before we had to undecorate our tree because of our toddler, we took turns. Like I hit it first, and then when my husband found it, he moved it, and then I had to find it, and then I moved it, and then we kind of played back and forth of taking turns. But it's just something we don't really. No one gets an extra gift, but it's fun to kind of just
I bet it's hard to find, honestly.
It's a green pickle on a green tree.
Yeah, right.
And then if your tree is super full and you've got ribbon and you've got stems sticking out of it, it can be quite hard to find.
One thing that would help in our house would maybe be a detriment to that is my wife has always really loved a lot of lights. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, I will take a string of lights, roll it up 3 times, and stuff it into one section, and repeat that process all around the tree. I'm talking about lights inside the tree, outside the tree, and wrapped around the tree.
I love it.
Followed by the same thing with red lights. Although less red lights than white lights, you have to wrap twice and stick it in all around. So we have a lot of lights on our tree.
Yeah, it's cool because you can get creative in hiding it. It's just something fun that we do, and I get a kick out of it, and I like it, and
that's fun. That's absolutely. Now, Neil, do you think you eat said pickle?
No, it's an ornament.
I think it's a fake one.
It's an ornament.
You have to go real.
Okay, well, no.
You have to go real. Oh, yeah, it's a pickle. It's a German thing. I'm sure they had a real pickle.
I don't want my tree
in
my living room to smell like a pickle.
Well, yeah, no.
Well, that's funny because one of the times when our kids were younger, we talk about the whole Santa Claus thing. My kid had his Christmas list, and it was weird stuff, random out of the blue stuff. And, of course, that was fun for my wife and me because we actually literally made everything, and he wanted a fake pickle. And so literally I crumbled newspaper and then taped it and then I painted it. It looked actually really good for a pickle, but it goes back to that thing. When your kids are younger, you do a lot of stuff for them to follow that make-believe. When they get older, it's different. But
yeah.
But yeah, that's
what you guys do, Neil? What's something comes to your mind for?
We do Belgian waffles on Christmas morning. I'll get up and I'll literally do homemade Belgian waffle mix and put the yeast in it, let it rise, and then we do a whole Belgian waffle thing. And it's funny, this year Mason was talking to I think Alicia's sister and told him yeah, we're gonna do Belgian waffles on Christmas Day, and he's excited about it, and I'm like, that's the goal because my dad did it. Talking about I came from 2 different with my parents divorcing. My mom's when I was with my mom for Christmas, it was free for all. You had your toys on the tree and you just go at it. Yeah. But with my dad and my stepmom, it was literally we would sit there and we would do stockings, and my stepmom would wrap everything in the stockings. You would go one at a time. So what we would do,
torture.
Right? So
your parents were a little opposite.
Takes forever.
But then my stepmom was actually raised by depression parents, so she we had to learn to be very careful because she would reuse the wrapping paper, and it became endearing. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But we would get up and we would do I would help my dad make the batter, and then we'd open up the stockings, and then by the time we got through all the stockings, because it's all these little pieces, the batter would rise, and then we'd take a break and we'd eat Belgian waffles, and then we'd come back and actually do the regular gifts. And so that was, but coming from both sides of the chaos and over control, I actually like the one at a time. I feel weird,
I like it.
But
I love it.
You get to watch the person's enjoyment. You see what it is. You get to the whole thing. But here's an interesting take. When you guys got married, how hard was deciding what traditions you stuck with and which was, because we
oh yeah, for sure,
that's a big thing. Like, we didn't have arguments, but it was like my wife was very adamant about, like, she wanted to do presents the night before, and then you would put stuff out from Santa, whatever, and that was always her thing. And me and my mom would, like, I don't know if she just procrastinated, maybe that's where I get it from. I don't know if she just went shopping the night of Christmas Eve, I don't know, but she would always bring the presents in while we were sleeping, and we'd have no presents on Christmas Eve. You had to have a bunch the next day. So we had two completely different ways we did it.
Yeah, and we would do family presents then Christmas Eve.
Seriously?
And then Santa is only Santa on Christmas morning.
In our house, it was Santa presents were unwrapped.
Yeah.
And then Christmas stuff. And my husband and I literally had, this is funny you bring this up. We literally had this discussion the other night because we were talking about it, as our kid gets older. He was like, no, Santa presents are wrapped. And I was like, no, Santa presents are unwrapped.
We a lot of times we don't wrap our Santa presents.
And I was like, and we went back and forth, and I was like, okay, well, Santa may have wrapped your presents, but Santa didn't wrap my presents.
What a fight!
And we're gonna fight.
Well, Neil, it's awesome that you asked that and bring that up. I mean, we're gonna get to assertiveness here now. I think we need to move.
You have to be assertive to get your traditions.
That's right. But really, it's a fascinating thing to me, Neil. And Victoria, you are right in the middle of it as new parents,
sure.
right? Because the kid triggers that longing for what did we do as a kid, and I want to do that with my kid.
Right.
But some of them directly are opposites, and so you really do go into a really dynamically cool blending of two whole family cultures, sometimes 3 or 4, with step parents and that type of thing involved. It's really cool, and you know what? You create your own. That's what's beautiful about it.
Yeah.
And look at such a small group sample size. We have so many different little facets about unwrapped and wrapped and timing, and how things are done all at once or separate, or pickles and waffles, and we have an upside down pineapple cake. I like to call it the upside down cherry pineapple turn cake because I make up names for it, right? But I love that, so we all have our thing. You out there have your things as well, and I really want you to enjoy what you can enjoy this holiday season for the Christmas holiday. Very special times.
I'm excited.
For family and friends. Yeah. So let's get to the assertiveness stuff a little bit. We didn't get to a whole lot last time. Neil, I guess I'm going to turn to you since we were rambling on and stuff, and you were listening. What do you remember about how understanding assertiveness and how it was defined? And I mean, I know that we hated the fact that the definition we came up with, the quality of being confident and not frightened to say what you want to say, was where we landed, versus the forceful behavior discussion. And we talked about boundaries and how boundaries are developed and set, and how assertiveness is a part of that. Did you get a good sense of what is assertiveness and how the beginning stages of using it and managing it all is? How do we do, and what do you recall?
No, I think we did a really good job. I think for the first little bit we got to.
Right.
But I think it is funny with the definitions about, because the idea of being forceful is not what you want. That's more of aggression than it is assertiveness, and then I loved the thing you brought up at the end about the requirements and the boundary setting. Like, those are some things that I thought was really cool pieces of it. I know Victoria was kind of like, requirements,
Yeah, I was a real confused.
But it was new to me, honestly, yeah.
And I talked to my wife, I said, I really liked that piece of it because, like I said, the idea is you're bringing your requirements, you're being assertive with what you want when you're setting the boundaries. And so I think that's a really neat dynamic or a statement to put when you're telling people you need to set boundaries. It's not always about going into boundaries with the goal of negotiating. The goal of boundaries is going in with your requirements, and then you might negotiate if there is a give and take. But I think I thought that was a fantastic thing you brought up last week.
Well, that's cool, Neil. I appreciate that feedback, because what I've always kind of said, well, not always, but for a very, very long time, you develop boundaries by long-term norms and agreements that you create together. And I was talking to, in therapy that last week, a very situation where the boundaries that we were talking about was with his developing ex-wife, is separated, and they're going to be divorced. You don't necessarily have agreements there. nor any long-term norms because everything's up in the air. And so we worked on the idea that, expressing what you require in discussing things and moving forward is certainly a part of sometimes, very healthy boundary setting. So, yeah, and that takes a lot of assertiveness at times. So let's move on a little bit to really understanding, why we want this. What are the benefits of assertiveness? I mean, you really do need to listen to the segment half the show last time. The last half of the show last time is what you want to get. Dang, that was hard to say. That's episode.
Are words hard for you today?
Yeah, I don't know. Episode 254, the second half, to really get a good idea on a long dive on what these definition is and understanding it. But why do we want it? What are the benefits? What do you really think about, guys, particularly you, Victoria, in working so, I feel like, intensely with people in therapy to get this? Why do we
benefits?
Want it? Why do we need it? What do we use it for?
Well, you're gonna have improved communication, or I like to say effective communication.
Right.
Because my example is all the time is I can punch a hole in the wall right here, and yes, it's communicating that I'm angry, but is it effectively communicating that I'm angry? No. That
might be important.
So, in order, so it's going to help your communication. I think it's also just going to help your overall relationship with people. If I'm not wrong, I think.
I think you're terribly wrong. I'm just kidding. Of course not.
No, just kidding. But I mean, I think overall, it just helps the bigger picture in your your relationship with the person. Because when you're assertive and you can actually communicate what you want, then things can actually happen. Things can actually be done.
Well, yeah. To me, it has a lot to do with relationships. Obviously, assertiveness implies really being. One of the parts of the definitions we came to, being able to feel safe and comfortable and confident enough to say, or do for that matter, what it is that we feel we need to say or do. Because don't we have assertiveness sometimes expressed through nonverbal communication just as much as verbal communication? Right?
Yeah, when I look at my kid
She's giving me the mom look, Neil. Yeah.
You better put that toy down is what I'm saying with my look.
Don't do that, right? So it really is about relationship. And we're going to talk a little bit here now or in a moment about why people get passive and why people get aggressive, because that is the opposite of assertive. It's the polar extends of the continuum. And, I wanted to think about why do we really want this? Because I feel like it's so little used, but so very important in really relating to people.
Being assertive?
Yeah. I don't think people are good at this.
No, because after we talked about it last week, I have themes that follow.
Oh, dear.
So I feel like I have talked my head off about assertiveness this past week since last Thursday.
Okay, maybe that's a good thing.
And I kept saying...
Personally or professionally?
Professionally.
Yeah.
I'm like, we just talked about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think that... I think people come into therapy seeking to work on other things, and then assertiveness is one of those underlying issues. If exactly. I'm just how we talked about last week, how assertiveness and confidence can kind of go hand in hand.
Yes.
And so I think it's the same with other things. When people talk about, oh, I'm struggling with my communication. Oh, I'm struggling with boundaries. Oh, I'm struggling with making connections with people. It's all that stuff. Okay, well, you need to work on being assertive. You're being assertive is going to help all those things.
You're totally nailing what I was trying to get to, Victoria, right? Because you don't think about this in a lot of those contexts. Mm-hmm. And you're right, and I hadn't really pieced that in my mind, so I love what you're talking about, because people do unintentionally come to therapy wanting to get exactly this, but don't even know it.
Right.
Because it applies to so many different ways, like you were just saying there. I love that. Neil, let me check in with you with what you're hearing, because I think, this is something that we see in a therapy office. You just confirmed, Victoria, like all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
How do you see this in the world, like when you're dealing with people through computers and the stuff that you do? Does that make,
Well, I mean, honestly, right now we see it in our house. We have 2 teenage boys who wrestle, and when they come home and complain about the coaches and like they want me to make this weight and I don't want to do that, I'm like, you need to stand up and tell them what you want. You need to be like, so, and I think that's very important for teenagers nowadays, because, I think that is a problem where you have people your age, my age, that assertiveness kind of like went away in the world for whatever reason. And when I was growing up, my stepmom would always say I had an ego and I need to work on my humility. And I'm like, it's a confidence thing. You have to, and I feel like for a time it's like they thought like having an ego or having like being confident was a bad thing. And I feel like that has been so ingrained that they've lost assertiveness. And
kind of like knocked us down.
Right, exactly. But it's not good. It goes back to social media. It goes back to, it's just. And so I think assertiveness needs to be addressed, especially for young teenagers. They need to be very confident in what they want and believe. And like I said, with my boys, you can call me old school, but I think boys need to be able to stand up, and the coaches, you want to assert yourself as what you want. And so I'm really dealing with it now, as I got one kid about, yours just left. Mine's going to leave soon.
Yeah.
And then another one just started high school. So there's these life changes, but assertiveness, the fact that you say stress reduction, I didn't think about. If you're assertive, you're gonna have less anxiety because you're gonna be more confident in what you're asking for or what you want. I never that's a really big thing. Yeah, it's like yeah, that makes sense, because if you're assertive in what you want and you know it and you feel confident in asking for it, or putting your stuff out there, you're not gonna be anxious about what are they gonna say or what's going on, or how are they gonna react, or
will I get what I want, or do I even have a chance? And just to jump in, Neil, because people, I fear, will just hear a certain sentence that you just said and go with like, oh, well, being good at being assertive what you want, that's being forceful. It's being aggressive. That's standing your ground, right? No, and no, right? So you're not teaching your kid to be arrogant and aggressive. It's different, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
You're putting your requirement, and it goes back to the same thing within, you want to be respectful of the other people.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be like, you're trying to park your car, and like, I want that spot, and you ram into the other car. That's a little too aggressive. But
have you ever seen fried green tomatoes?
I have not, but I know what you're talking, because my wife is my insurance.
Tawanda, she takes. Okay, you have to watch it. But no, okay. So it's this lady is trying to park, and these like young women in their nice convertible car whip into the spot, and she's tries to keep her cool, and then she said to Wanda, you have to watch the movie to understand that, and then she takes her car, she yells Tawanda, and then she takes her car and repeatedly rams it into this car that took her parking spot, and then drives off in her beat up car that's still drivable.
Well, I'm laughing because just literally last night at a restaurant that I'll remain undisclosed, I was hanging out with the owner, and she was talking to me because the place was busy, and I go there on Wednesdays and I have my spot, and she's like, they have your spot, and I'm like, I know they have my spot. She's like, I will go and stare at them and I will make them move. I'm like, no. She actually walked up to the person at the bar that I wanted to sit, and I was like, oh, no, don't do that, but she knew the patron that was there in front of me.
Was it your usual Wednesday
spot? Oh yeah,
spot? Okay,
absolutely, right? So it was assertiveness is not these things.
Right.
This is aggressive.
This is crossing the line.
This is crossing the line. It's being mean. It's being forceful, and that's the opposite side of passive. Being a doormat, and Neil, you're trying to get your son to not be passive. People do not understand what the mid-zone is, where we want to be, and that is assertive, not aggressive, not passive, but we suck, honestly, at being in that middle space. So I'm glad you're teaching him how to do that.
Trying to, and we're doing it with both of them too. And so I got once we get with one, we're gonna deal with the other. And the funny thing is the two personalities. You talk about my oldest. if he doesn't get what he wants or he has anxiety, he's gonna get aggressive and he's gonna get to that point where it's just gonna blow, and he's gonna because he had an issue with a ex-girlfriend that instead of talking to her and asserting what he wanted, it's like he ended up kind of freaking out. Like, okay. But then my youngest is the opposite. He's passive. He'll literally, like, if he doesn't get what, he'll just get. So it's funny that, like, I literally have both sides of that spectrum. And so I'm trying to get them
to, like, both
you don't want to say be like your brother, but in this case, like, I say that to both of them. Like, Mason, you need to be like Luke and kind of tone down, kind of lay back. Luke, you got to, like, step up a little bit and you got to find that middle ground. So it's kind of funny that I'm dealing with both sides.
And I love that, right? And I want to build in, like, we have a comment on YouTube that I think is absolutely on point. And so it said that people can be afraid of hurting someone's feelings, right? That's something that happens when you're engaging in relationship to others. And she says that, but if you're not assertive, you'll hurt someone anyway. And I think that's so true, what you're finding in the different ways with both boys in opposite directions. I mean, if you're aggressive, you're obviously going to hurt somebody, Victoria, if you slam your car into the lady's car.
Yeah, punch this wall.
Yeah, right. But you're also hurting people sometimes when you're passive, right?
Or you're hurting yourself.
Well, you're hurting yourself for sure, but even other people, though, I want to make the point. You know, being silent, not really telling somebody what you're thinking, not really telling somebody what you need or what you want, ends up being complete mystery. And for some people, Victoria, like us in the abandonment room, right?
Yeah.
How do we handle that? Like, not well, right?
Not well.
You see all of her nonverbals. She didn't say anything,
sorry.
but she's just like
I forget.
off in the myriad of ways that
mean,
it's torturous. It's torturous when somebody's that silent.
I tell people all the time when I work with people on boundaries, like being assertive and setting boundaries, is that sometimes setting boundaries means you're gonna, like, hurt someone's feelings.
Yeah, hopefully not, but sometimes.
But like I always say, usually if they get upset, defensive about it, it's because they were benefiting from you not having that boundary there in the first place.
Right.
And that was hurting you. And so, like, you got to take care of your own mental health.
Right.
And sometimes that means, like, doing things that might be slightly uncomfortable for other people.
It's very uncomfortable
Well,
because if you're passive, to get a little aggressive is very pushing the limits. If you tend to be aggressive and you become less, and become more passive, that also gets out of your comfort zone.
Well, I think also, like, if you set a boundary and it really makes the other person upset and, like, distraught about it, if it's a legitimate boundary, it makes you question the relationship or what issues the other person has to work through. Because if they're really in the relationship to win be in it, like, they shouldn't be hurt when you come across and say, look, I need you to start doing this, or I need this. Like, that's one of those things you got to start thinking, like, well, is the problem the boundary, or is it the other person that doesn't like the boundary? And so, but once again, you have to come up with your requirements and then you negotiate from there. So
you really like those requirements.
I do, man.
He did. I mean, he was the one that explained it to me last week. So.
Yeah. Now, hopefully you go at it more, Neil, with starting in the agreement zone and negotiating how we're going to operate. Just like, for instance, Victoria and her husband Josh, like, working hard to figure out what are going to be our Christmas traditions. We don't need to come at this conversation with requirements. We need to come at them with, like, ideas.
How can we blend the two families?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a sharing and a blending and an agreement level. I mean, that's really where we want.
Well, if you have a relationship with the person, you should come across, as you talk about.
You do naturally.
It's those norms you've kind of created over time, and so you should come at it pseudo,
you're likely
like,
going to have a lot of agreements anyway.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I tell people, or work with a lot of people too, on it. It's sometimes also about the intent behind. Like, if I'm setting this boundary with the intent to harm you, okay, that's different than if I'm setting this boundary with the intent to make our relationship better, right? And, like, there's a difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. Yeah, there's a big difference. Yeah, Carolyn says on YouTube Live, like, that she loves this topic and something she's working on with, which, as we say in the beginning of the show, Carolyn, we're really trying to endeavor to figure this out together, because these are not easy things to do. They really are not. I wanted to make a note of the emotionally focused therapy patterns, right? And before we do, let's kind of take a moment to honor and mention our sponsor. Neil, do you remember who is the sponsor?
I believe it's First Horizon Bank.
And why do we like First Horizon Bank as our sponsor? Because they're awesome?
Yeah, they're awesome. Great locations, great branches, great people. They want to focus on your, Evan was all about financial literacy. And just like anything else in today's time, there's a lot of foundational stuff we don't know, young people don't know. And the fact that they help you get there, and it's a great place to go. The anxiety of going to the bank is not there because it's a great down home bank that you can just go in and get your any financial services you need.
They have all the typical things that banks do. I gather loans, loan structures, debt calculators, mortgage calculators, people that are sitting there ready to help you with, your financial planning, credit card processing. They really do care about financial literacy and carrying the level of service that you would expect from a bank in excellent fashion. Any thought, Miss Victoria, who is we talking about in these parts?
First Horizon.
All right, thanks. We'll get back to the show with assertiveness. So, emotionally focused therapy is, we've talked about on the show several times. You got, engulfment people that tend to withdraw and abandonment people that tend to pursue. Yeah, jump on and, go at it. So the trouble with both of those is that when you're withdrawing, you tend to be more passive in laying things out between two people. And when you tend to be, abandonment, Victoria's giggly because she knows what's coming, right? You tend to be more aggressive about what it is that you put out there. So if the intensity of what you're feeling is there, and you just think about your marital fights, right? Think about your marital disagreements. Do you tend to be in the middle, or do you tend to do what you do, withdraw or pursue, when you get triggered and in a highly anxious state? As difficult as it is to be assertive in the middle, the point that I'm really making is when you get worked up, this action, and becomes even more important to do so, this actually becomes so much harder to do. Doesn't that suck?
Well, yeah.
It's unfortunate that when you need it the most, calm, compassionate, clear, direct, assertiveness, that you're going to fall into the trap of being either loud and aggressive, obnoxiously to a certain extent so, or quiet and withdrawn, passive and not letting the other person know what you're even thinking, unfortunately. Have you thought about it in those terms? Is it making sense? Let me get a sense of where this is landing with your all's brains.
I like that you called the abandonment people obnoxious. That fit really well.
Spoken from an engulfment.
I'm rolling my eyes.
Oh, you're on camera. Yeah. They can see that.
Well, I'm rolling my eyes.
No, it does make sense. And, I'm looking at my relationship, I'll be married 20 years next week. So
oh my gosh.
We've had
congratulations, bud.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I'm surprised she's still with me. But it's funny because I am very engulfment. She's very abandonment. And so I know there's been many times in our relationship where we've been kind of like at that stalemate because I'm like, just leave me alone. I'm let me process it. And she's like, tell me what you're feeling. Leave me alone. Tell me what you're feeling. Leave me alone. So it's kind of it. But yeah, in those moments, it is really hard to, as someone who's passive, get that confidence to say what's going on. And then on the abandonment side is not to overstep and take over the conversation. Because, we've had that too, where I'll say something and she'll come back at me and I'm like, this is why I don't tell you anything. This is why I just keep quiet, And so, but yeah, it does make sense. But in a relationship, there's a growth process as you balance that. And honestly, one of the big things too in our relationship is you start getting that safety net of knowing that other person. And
safety is a really important word.
You start getting to where now I feel more comfortable saying what I feel. And she's getting more comfortable knowing, I don't have to burst out because I know that I can talk to him, or she knows that I'm just careless or I do something out of it. She understands it. It's different. And so, but trust it takes improves. Years to improve, to get to that point.
It really does take years for trust to improve, to get to a place where you can be calm and grounded in your own skin so that you're more enabled to be assertive. It takes a long time. Let's look at a little bit at first at why people then get into this. I alluded to the insecurities that you might see with emotionally focused therapy, abandonment and engulfment being primary. But there are things that get into like what makes people tend to be passive or what makes people tend to be aggressive. If we just think about it in basic terms, I mean, probably like it was said on the YouTube live, people being really fearful of upsetting other people. Isn't that like a universal
I hate
theme?
confrontation.
Right.
I don't like it.
I don't either.
It's funny though, because when I sit in my therapist chair, I'll be direct confrontational all day long with my clients, to help them see their stuff.
Right.
When I go home,
don't like it.
Instant I leave that office, I'm like, nope, I don't want it. I don't want it.
Same, because when your emotions are triggered or engaged, that tends to create that ambivalence.
That seems backwards to me.
Does it?
As two abandonment people,
yeah.
How are you guys not the confrontational people? Like, I understand from my side, if same thing. Like, I understand going home and being like, oh, I'm mad at something, I'll just go. But you guys being abandonment, both of you hating non-confrontational abandonment, like, how does that jive with you guys? That's weird.
Okay, for me, I don't know about Chris,
go ahead.
but for me, I think it's sometimes so abandonment people, you are afraid the other person's going to leave you. So you're like on top of it. You want to figure things out immediately, like whatever, because you don't want to be abandoned, right? You have the fear of being abandoned. So I think sometimes with conflict, I'm afraid to bring up conflict because I'm afraid it might lead to someone abandoning me. If that makes sense.
100%.
And so then therefore, like if I am mad at my husband, for example, but I don't want to talk about it because then I don't want to like be assertive and bring it up because then I have this fear in my brain that like he's going to get fed up with me and like leave me. And abandon me.
Or I'll be alone for a night or something along those lines. Yeah, Neil, I'm glad this came up this way and you posed that because it is an awesome thought process and one that I think needs to really be normalized so that we all really understand each other. The same fear of conflict can be there for totally and opposite different reasons. You just, I think, honestly, expertly described the fear that leaves us to shut up because we don't want to piss you off and make you leave. But the same thing is I'm going to be fear of conflict because I don't want to receive more criticism and more control and more loudness. That shuts me down. So it really does. People do not feel confident and good. That's why it is actually universal with conflict. It raises our our threatened state with adrenaline and cortisol and, the nervous system, the fight or flight or freeze system that comes in, man, it hits us all. It just may be for diametrically opposite different reasons, Neil. Does that make sense? It's an awesome thought.
No, it does.
Yeah,
it does make sense.
You bring up a good point of like why you would be confused by that.
Well, it's like I said, it's just like
it doesn't.
I'm abandonment, and I want to say what's going on, but it's like I hate conflict.
But guess what happens when there's no conflict? Yeah, we're gonna blow our mind out with everything that we think and everything that we want and everything that we're going through, right? Because there's no conflict.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
We can be annoying now.
Yeah, but now, what's that?
I said yes, we can be annoying.
A lot.
But knowing my wife, talking to her, I can be very annoying as well. So it's funny how it's just different.
Humans are humans in a different way, indeed. But if you think about passivity, there is the fear of conflict. I think that really goes both ways. But there's also, I think, approval seeking more so than anything else with getting into yourself, internalizing. You don't want criticism, you don't want to be controlled, so you will withdraw and pull in, and therefore approval seeking becomes even more louder than with other people that tend to be more aggressive and louder about their thoughts because there's poor anger management or poor emotion control, poor ability to really contain yourself. And it does operate in opposites, you know. Abandonment people need to learn how to control, internalize, and settle themselves down. And engulfment people need to be able to learn how to, like, you know, put out their thoughts and be damned whether somebody is in approval of that or not. Mm-hmm. And then you got the universal fear of conflicts. And I think it's also a little bit universal about people that kind of learn how to engage either passively or aggressively. Some of this really is modeled in our lives, and we learn how it goes, you know, in the rules of interaction. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So let's go on a little bit to how do we overcome this stuff? What do we do to get, you know, people you might listening saying like, okay, great. I understand what, you know, being assertive it is. Okay, great. I get why we want to be assertive. Okay, I get why it's difficult because, you know, all this emotional crap going on. How do I overcome it? Right? Victoria, you've been thinking about this a lot in sessions and talking about it this week. It sounds like a lot. Have you figured out with anybody? Have they told you? Have you told them? What have you figured out about how do we get over this thing?
I mean, I think some of it goes back to what we talked about last week with confidence, which then leads into like self-esteem, self-worth, all those things. Self-love, all the selves things.
Self.
Not self-sabotaging, but...
Not selfish either.
Yeah. But the other ones. And, you know, I mean, like, I do a lot of mindfulness. You know me, I'm a big mindfulness fan. I end literally anyone who's a client of mine knows I end every session with a deep breath.
Oh, good. That's interesting.
And sometimes they do it with me, sometimes they don't. But that's okay. But yeah, like mindfulness because, I mean, for those that don't know, mindfulness is about being like in the here and now, in the present, being aware, things like that. So sometimes being aware like that, you can learn to become assertive by being present and being aware of like your surroundings, what's needed, where you're at, what you're doing, why you're here.
Sometimes she just stops, Neil.
That's it. That was the end of my sentence. That was the end of my sentence.
I was loving your go. I mean, go, girl. And then she just like...
staring at me.
I've actually wanted to say that on air for a long time, Victoria.
What? Did I just stop and say
that? Sometimes you're just like,
my ADHD.
Boom. You just like, boom.
Have you never talked to someone that has ADHD?
Yes,
you talk to me every day, basically, 5 days a week.
So to play off what you're talking about, here's some real thought, guys, in the moment that I just kind of connect.
Okay, give it to us.
Right? Truly and fully in real connections in the moment. Because you remember, we were talking about this last time, and I was like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. It's kind of cool. I was working it out in my mind. Is assertiveness... remember John and I were interacting with this. Mm-hmm. Is assertiveness actually the steady state, the where we begin?
Oh yeah, that's right.
And what we have as almost, you know, normal, reflexive, normal, ingrained tendency as a baby when we pop out and we're dealing with stuff like when you pop out, you come out into the world and you have like reflexes to assertively let the world know, Neil, what you need, what you want, what you've got to have.
Are you saying your requirements?
Very good. Very good. You know what? I am so glad this occurred to me. You're right, because they are the baby's requirements to the world, and they convey those in a natural state, right? You know, and then all these things begin to happen where people don't listen, or we get scowls and irritations from our daddy or our mommy, and, you know, we start like picking up all these human cues and all this stuff. Sometimes in horrible situations such as neglect, you know, you learn it's not even worth it to cry. I'm not going to get food. It doesn't matter. Or if you learn, wow, this parent's over-responsive. If I'm loud and tantrum, they get it quick.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you talk about building self-esteem and learning how to manage your emotion and, you know, building up communication skills and mindfulness and taking breaths and all these things, maybe we could really simplify it and say we're trying to manage our unwanted or destructive emotional states to return to that normal, steady state that we started from in the first place, which is assertive, and then got away from it. This is literally switching completely 360 degrees in my head. Does that make sense?
You mean 180?
180, yeah, 360 would be where I began. Thank you. It's a 180 change. How's this landing? What are you guys hearing? And have I just rambled on to somewhere that doesn't make sense?
I mean, based off last week, I agree. I would agree with you about what we talked about last week, that possibly we are relearning how to be assertive.
Yeah.
In our like adulthood or whatnot. I don't know.
It's an ebb and flow, I think, because and just like anything else in life, there's always this ebb. We talked about mental health now. There's more mental health awareness, but we don't have the tools yet to deal with it. But before our generation we shut down our emotions. So I think in life we go through an ebb and flow. You're overly assertive. Parents in life kicks you down and be like, hang on, it's not just about you. So then you become overly considerate. And then you get to then you start finding that balance of, oh wait, how do I get what I need and still live within the realms of my world? And so I think that's just kind of the ebb and flow of life. It's just like any other situation with kids. When a new kid goes to school, they kind of feel like, okay, how assertive can I be, or how aggressive can I be with my friends here, or more timid, and then you get that balance. But I think that's always the human nature. Anytime there's a relationship, there's a balance. Do you be assertive? Do you be less assertive? Like, what's going on? And so I do think naturally our human survival is we need what we need. We're aggressive, assertive to get it, and then we just figure out how do we balance this in life. What are you singing?
Human nature.
I know, Neil. I was like, what's going on over there with Miss Victoria?
I had a John moment. He said human nature, so I started singing.
Well, sing it, because John's not here. You got to do it now.
I don't know the words.
You don't know the words?
I was just babbling.
Human nature?
I don't know all the words.
Oh,
and we would lose all of our listeners if we
we had a John moment. Yeah, Neil, that's the word, and I use that in therapy like so commonly, and I was waiting for you to say it, or I was going to say it, and the word is balance. You say ebb and flow, and it really is. I think that people are so afraid of being in these aggressive or passive states that they overcompensate and just swoosh back and forth, and that happens a lot in teenage years. And we like to think that we mature and grow up, but man, this is such a hard thing to get a balancing act on. And if you think that you've got it, then just think about, again, your marital conversations. And the reason why I say that is because those are the ones that you're going to tend to have the most emotion in. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that you're going to have the most skin in the game. And those are the ones where your insecurities tend to get raised the greatest. And the second is probably very much your parenting relationships. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're living with your parent or your kid. Because the same reasons. When your emotions are really moving around, Neil, it's hard to have that balance. And honestly, it's hard to have that assertiveness. Which is why, if you think about it, you said, Victoria, at work, you're here, you're fine all day long. You're in confrontations and you have a balance and you're grounded. It's because your skin isn't in the game. I experienced that as well. And that's why people are saying, oh, I'm assertive. I do just fine. I manage people at work all day long. I know how to get my point across. I know how to get understood, and I know how to really deal with conflict. Until you go home.
I was going to say, yeah, but what about in your personal life?
Well,
and I have to confront people about that in therapy. My point is, like, all the time, because they're thinking about their abilities when they're in steady states, and there's less skin in the game with your friends or with work.
Right.
Generally, is balanced. What was that, Neil? I may have cut you off. Sorry.
I think an example of show how control you are is how do you handle yourself with someone who has authority over you? Like my kids with wrestling, with your boss, with your and your spouse, or with your parents. like how assertive are you really with those people? I mean, that's kind of to me like a dynamic thing. Like when I see my kids with their friends or even with us, they push back on us sometimes, but we have to put them in their place because, you know, hey, we're still the parent. But when you say, hey, go talk to the coaches about it, they're like, I can't do that. It's like, how is it like that's to me, that's when the rubber meets the road. When you have to like really assert yourself because there's a pushback. That's when it really matters to me. Like there's something that is a huge stake to you that matters to you that you care. Because my oldest, his biggest thing is he doesn't want to disappoint the coaches.
Right.
And he doesn't want to say this is what I need to do. And I mean, he got pretty rough 2 years ago.
I think I want to kind of push back a little bit, Neil, at just part of that. And part of that I want to push back is not when something's a big deal to you. You know, the wrestling is important to him. He doesn't want to lose that. There's more skin in the game there. But the part that I want to push back is on authority. Now, if you're dealing with an authority figure like your boss or whatever, it is going to be a little bit more difficult than dealing with your coworker. But that's just because you care a little bit more about what your boss, because they control your raise, says. So to me, it's like I really, really care about what my wife says. Right, because I live with her, and that affects me like daily. So it's really how much emotion and how much skin you have in the game, and when you have to confront something that the rubber meets the road. That makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So let's go a little bit. Hey, Barbara, by the way, she really enjoyed the topics. Good to see you.
Hi, Grandma.
Grandma Barbara. You have to tell her about the name thing later. Did you ever, you know what I'm talking about, Victoria? No, well, I'll tell you. I'll remind you.
Yeah, refresh my memory.
So I want you to think about just some things that you could practice here, right? Before we're out of time. Nonverbal communication. We had a cool article on our website that might help you to think about these things. But how many of these things that you already do, and these are things that you can really begin to do to honestly hold a little bit of assertiveness, and it's mostly nonverbal communication. But think about Victoria's take a breath, breathe it fully in, get grounded with your feet in the ground, and breathe out. Then you begin to move, standing straight. You put your shoulders back. You put your chin up in the air so that your head is straight and level. Eyes contact with the other person's eyes, a handshake that is firm and solid, being able to keep your body open and direct with somebody so that this body space and the solid walk and all that you're conveying, you can begin to practice. What does a solid, confident, comfortable, assertive person look like?
It's like when you go into a job interview and you get all dressed up and you stand in front of your mirror and you practice saying you practice whatever your speech or whatever it is in front of the mirror.
Yes.
So that way, or you like have a friend or you practice with a spouse, like before you go into the office and do something or before you give a speech or, whatever.
Chin up.
Yeah.
Eyes up. Solid voice. Solid stance. Like, that speaks a lot before you even say a word. Mm-hmm. Then there's a lot of the verbal being clear, slow, precise, with a good pace, not being rude. Say no when you mean no, say yes when you mean yes, being good boundaries. Don't contradict or back down, say something and then say something different to water that down. Have a calm presence. I statements and statements from self-perspective, having appreciation and having a sense of humility, but having compassion in your statements, having a sense of gratitude. When you ever hear somebody talk about what they're thinking or what they're feeling, and you're just like, okay, I get that. Yeah, that feels solid. If you learn your delivery, beautiful orators. I love talking or listening to people that are good at doing that. These are things that you can really practice to really begin to experience as well. Because when you practice them and you do them, you feel it. You feel it. If you have successful eye contact, if you're not used to that, and you look up and meet somebody's eyes, and it goes well, and it's comfortable and safe, like that is so rewarding. I have had a lot of people with handshakes, that like give that handshake out that they really don't want to hand, and it's like, but then when I've worked with people to firm that up, it's like, wait a minute, I can do that.
Try being a woman.
What you mean
every
by
time
that?
I hate every time, and this has happened to me several times.
By the way, I don't want to try to be a woman.
It's okay. No, but I'm probably fellow women and girls will understand this, but like sometimes when I go to shake the hand of a man, he'll do the nice little like
figure shake.
My wife hates that.
Whole little let me just delicately like hold your hand. I'm like, no, like I can give a firm handshake. Like, I remember one time I dated this guy in the Air Force forever ago, and I went to his graduation, and he was introducing me to his friends, and I shook their hands like a normal freaking person.
Right.
And they were like, oh, my gosh, you have such a strong handshake. I was like, thank you. Like, I'm not this.
I love that.
Don't just, like, if you're watching the YouTube, you can see me, but, like, don't just grab my hand like I'm some delicate little flower. Like.
Yeah.
It's patronizing.
Yeah, it is.
It is patronizing.
Like the guy that came by earlier today, like I loved it. He shook my hand like I was a normal person, and I was like, "Thank you."
Yeah, that's interesting, Victoria. There are definitely some gender fears and some gender norms that really like people get freaked out about. I mean, from a guy's world, I could tell you. So I don't come from it, my perspective myself, but I can imagine people very easily getting the message, "Hey, I'm supposed to protect a woman. I'm supposed to be the strong figure, and I don't want to do harm, and so I want to show respect," much like Queen Elizabeth. Like, you're supposed to do that to a queen.
Right.
A man, a knight, is supposed to be very delicate and whatnot to a queen. But
I'm
so
not a queen.
Right.
I have the name of one, but I'm not. Not am one.
Queen Vicky. I'm
gonna start calling you Christopher.
Oh
no!
That's not the one.
He actually has another
Which
name.
one is it? Tell me.
Neil.
You have to find it on the show.
Neil.
We did talk about it on the show. You have to find it.
Episode.
I don't remember. You have to find it. But yes, and that's what I was gonna say. You need to watch out because we know the name you don't like.
It's
like
not
too
Chrissy
long
or
ago
something like that.
So, but I think the key that you keep pointing out to this through all these things we're talking about skills and everything, it's a build up, it's a practice. So if you really have a struggle with these things, don't let it get you down because sometimes it takes a while. And so that's something I want to emphasize that. Good point, yeah. These are something that, like, when my kid was in karate, you could watch those kids. It would take 2-3 months before they finally looked the sensei in the eye and did the hand. Like, it takes time. Yeah. And so if and it takes, like, that's why when you know you're going to interview, go interview for jobs you don't want or you don't think you're going to get, just to get the nerves out of the way.
Just fair enough.
It's very important to
particularly
practice.
If you haven't interviewed in a while.
Yeah. So I just want to point out that you mentioned that a few times. I just really want to emphasize, like, don't feel bad if you're going to struggle at the beginning with assertiveness, especially if you're not used to it, and so really work on it.
Very true.
Also, if you're in college, my college offered this. I'm assuming most colleges with student activities and stuff offer this. But, like, my college offered mock interviews. And,
I thought you were going to public speaking class. I thought you were going to a public speaking class.
But, I mean, there are opportunities, like, in college and continuing education to practice assertiveness. Like, do the mock interviews, do the public speaking classes, do the things that kind of, like, push you to learn how to be assertive, and then you can, like, take it in and go.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Listen, we are riding with you through the holidays of 2023. Pretty soon, the New Year bells are going to be ringing, and we have a renewal of the year and renewal of the spirit a lot of times people get into. So we recognize the holidays are tough. We recognize that this topic can be tough with assertiveness. So we endeavor to figure this out together. We endeavor to travel this with you. So we trust that you're doing well, and we appreciate you being with us. So take care, stay well,